Start now. Good morning, everyone. We are just waiting for a couple of extra classes that registered to tune in, and then we'll get going with this morning's talk. Good morning and welcome to this Meet Your Future session. We are in our final week of our MYF sessions at Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and this week we are celebrating Women in Engineering. In these sessions throughout the year, we have heard from people who work in Greater Manchester, and you have the opportunity to ask them your questions about their journey and what they do in their job. My name is Laura and I'm your co-host today. I work at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and it's my job to help young people find out more about the different jobs and pathways that are out there. One of the ways you can do that is on the GMAX website, which has lots of information for young people who live in Greater Manchester. Today, though, we're going to hear from Rachel, who is a business applications delivery manager from a housing association called Torus. Rachel's talk is all about her experience as a woman in the digital engineering field, her role, and taking a look at other careers in digital as well. If you've got any questions, please can I ask your teachers to pop them in the chat box throughout Rachel's presentation, and Rachel will have time to answer them at the end. I am now delighted to hand over to Rachel.
Thank you, Laura. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on how I got into technology, how I got into software engineering, and what my role has been since then. Next slide, please. So my role, what is it? Business Applications Delivery Manager. Sounds like a grandiose title. What does it cover? Well, I look after with my team approximately 200 applications at Torus, which range from huge ERP, that's enterprise resource planning systems running HR and payroll, for example, and finance, to smaller systems where there may be only 3 or 4 users utilising that product. So how did I get into technology? If I'm honest, I fell into it by accident. I worked in local government, public sector, and I started actually just as an admin function, admin role, supporting officers that were going out at the time to visit properties in terms of poll tax. Now, you won't remember poll tax, you won't even know about it, but it was a way that the government collected money to pay towards services that the public sector would run. So, for example, we all know that we get our bins collected, but local government is much bigger than that. It's about education, health and social care, there's environmental impact, there's urban planning, arts and culture, so things like leisure centres, for example, as well. And it meant that I could work in an industry where there was lots of different opportunities as well. So I could use my skills, you know, being a good team player. My mathematical background was really important as well for logical thinking. And over the years, I moved around the council until eventually I got into IT approximately 23 years ago. And from that point in time, I've gained a lot of knowledge in how to configure applications. So an application could be something like an app, you know, for example, Instagram, where, you know, the council would use a website to interact with our customers, and you know, where you can look for events or you can pay for services. You might need a wasp nest removing, for example. So it's all about different roles within that environment and how then I got into that technology. I'm a logical thinker. I love maths at high school and into college, and it's really important to use those logical thinking skills when you're in technology. So whether that's looking after hardware such as mobile phones or laptops, or indeed looking after the applications that run the business for the council. So over the years, I ended up configuring systems, using code to make the programs work in the way that we needed to. Also looked at the front end. When I talk about front end, I'm talking about what the user sees and how they interact with a service. So for example, if you use a banking app these days, what goes into that is quite a lot of build, user experience workshops, but also to understand the best way to use the application in the least amount of time as well. Now I work in a housing association, and the reason why I moved to a HA, as they're called, is because we were looking after our most vulnerable customers. It's social housing, where people need to be able to live, in affordable and safe homes. We have to make a vital contribution to somebody's well-being as well. And within the private social landlord sector, there's a lot of innovation and a lot of applications that drive the day-to-day business. So for example, if someone comes out to do a repair, it might be that they're plastering, or they could be looking at the electrics, then that operative that goes out to that person's home needs to interact digitally. So they may have to fill out forms, they may have to get information from the customer, they may need to understand what the problem is, but also they may need to produce a certificate, which is all done electronically. And that means a PDF being emailed out or downloaded by the customer for them to use in the future. So for me, I've always been attracted to a company that looks after their customers, and making a difference is at heart of all of this. So coming to a council, there's lots of opportunities, lots of different job roles, and within the digital department, that's also reflected. So for example, you can look at how we can make our architecture run in the right way, what servers we use, do we go to cloud, do we virtualize our own servers? There's lots of interesting and intricate roles there within the technology stack. Next slide, please. So when I talk about a range of roles, I mean, there's so many different technical roles. You can look at user researchers that go out and actually interact with customers to find out what they need. They develop products with the customer at heart. So you've got to have really good customer care skills, be able to work as a team, understand what the problem is we're trying to solve as well is really important. So when you're doing your chemistry GCSE, for example, you're looking at a method of an experiment. You have to get the basics, you have to understand what you're trying to achieve, what the end result should be. And it's very similar in IT as well. So applying those skills is really fundamental and important within that environment. So for example, on my team, I've got application analysts, so they build and enhance the existing applications that we use, but they also look at the future and how we can improve what we do, and also what technology we can bring into the company to improve the lives of our tenants, our customers. You can be a product manager where you own a particular product or application, and you make sure that from when it becomes a sort of an idea in someone's mind to actually going live and having a number of users utilizing that service, you look after that product end to end. So, working this way means that we can make a difference. We can, there's lots of career progression as well. We're bringing in apprentices now within Torus to make sure we're fit for the future, and we've also got a young voice as well. And that means we're looking at particular roles within sort of the hardware, looking after your servers and your devices, your laptops, your PDAs, your mobile phones, and also looking after your applications software as well. And in fact, if anyone's interested, but we are based in Liverpool, there is an apprenticeship role being advertised currently, an IT level 3 solutions technician role. It's really important that we get young people interested, especially these days when not necessarily going to college is a career choice or the right choice, but actually looking at doing an apprenticeship and getting a level 3 qualification whilst working and earning a salary. So going back to where I am now in terms of, starting with those ground fundamentals that will assist in an IT career is, are you good at time management? Are you good at working as a team? Do you understand a task? Can you see it from end to end? I'm assuming you've had to present to your peers in different subject matters, and that's a similar thing here. We present back to the business, for example, to let them know where we're up to in a project, what we're delivering, what they need to do as well. We work with the business to ensure they test what we build and also understand why we're building it in the way that we do. And those skills you can apply across any sector. So even if you're not thinking at this moment in time that you want to work in technology, and you don't think, well, I'm doing geography, I'm doing art, and maybe that doesn't fit in. Well, it does, because a digital marketeer looks at the communication side of the website, makes sure the content is relevant for our users, make sure it's interesting, and we're actually connecting with our environment in terms of what are people using. Well, we're on Twitter, for example, we have a website, but actually are we reaching younger people with the right medium? So there's lots of different ways that even if you don't think of technology as something that you want to do, that you can apply anything that you're doing currently in high school or college to enable that kind of role and that career path as well. Next slide, please. So this section is around about the sort of challenge to stereotypes. So, for example, it's well known and well documented that women in IT, there's a lack of diversity across the piece there. And we're trying to change that. We're trying to, invite and attract young talent, but in particular a more diverse workforce as well. For me, working in IT for so long, it's a shame that things are slowly moving in the right direction, but it's still taking time. And I think we need to understand why that is an issue for young people, particularly young women coming into technology, why that is, and what we can do better to champion that. So, for example, we're looking at neurodiversity, which is a big work stream at Torus at the moment, to make sure we attract and retain the right talent, and we support all our workforce. So when you start looking at the world of work, it's really important to understand the culture of where you want to go. It's not just about the role and whether you want to go for that role and it's something of an interest, but actually a whole 360 view of, is the company right for me? Do they support me as an individual, and do they support a particular group, and make sure that people are all catered for across that wide diversity? So it's really important that you ask the right questions if you're interviewing currently, or you're thinking of interviewing, about the culture, and that you read up on where you're going to go as well, and see what they do for their staff and how they support them. Do they ask questionnaires? Do they get information from surveys? Do they use that information to drive changes within the workforce and the workplace? So all of these things are really important to consider when you're looking to move into software, or any company, to be honest with you, is to understand the demographics and also what there is in place to support you as a young person moving into the world of work. Next slide, please. So if you wanted and were interested at looking at Torus, we're on Twitter, as I say, we're on LinkedIn. If anybody looks on LinkedIn, it's more useful when you're looking for work particularly. And we have a number of websites that describe what we do, where we are, and how we've come together as well. A little bit about Torus is that we're three separate entities, three separate businesses that have come together to provide approximately 40,000 homes across Liverpool, St Helens and Warrington. We're a housing association, so we're a social landlord, and any profit that we make from our company is then ploughed back into our charitable arm. So we look after our communities, we provide digital inclusion opportunities, we have a leisure arm within that, we support young people, as well as your typical building properties, looking after properties, and also providing different kinds of schemes, especially for people over the age of 55 as well, and how we design and develop our buildings and the environmental impacts can be found on the main Torus website that leads off to these sub-sites as well, if you're interested in finding out a little bit more. Next slide, please, Laura. So just for this section now that we're going to have a little quick break. But one of the questions I wanted to ask is if anyone's got the opportunity to look at the website during this session now, just have a quick review of it and give some feedback by posting into the chat. It's about, well, you know, what can we do better? The website serves a purpose, but I'm sure it's probably not aimed or doesn't give the right kind of information that would someone want to see on a very surface level. There's a lot deeper content on there, and it's about how we improve that look and feel. So while we're on a quick 1-2 minute break, if you've got a chance, have a look and then feedback, please.
Perfect, thank you, Rachel. So we will take a pause until 10:20 a.m. I've popped the Torus website link into our chat box so our audience can take a look, and please feel free to post any ideas directly to Rachel within the chat box, and we'll see you at 10:20. welcome back everybody from that break. If anybody has any further ideas or feedback for Rachel, please would you add them to the question box now. And for now, for Rachel, I'll just read out the comments that we've had so far. So someone has commented to say, what about accessibility to your website? I think my gran would struggle to navigate this, maybe. Rachel, would you mind commenting?
Yeah, sorry. There are there's a certain standard we have to adhere to for accessibility. Admittedly, it's not so easy to find on the websites, and we use a piece of software as well to complement the accessibility standards within the website itself. Which also leads me on to another question, which is about what we're doing to develop the websites this year. So we've got a new project that's due to go live beginning of July, where we've consolidated, reduced basically the number of websites that we've got. We've gone for a better look and feel, a more easy to access and navigate. We've changed the menu functions, the search bars. We're also looking at chatbots as well, just so that people can use that instead of the search function. It won't necessarily assist them with a particular query they've got, but it'll help them to find information on the website a lot easier as well. So over time, we'll develop and enhance that as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Rachel. If we don't have any further comments, I'll just move you on to the next slide.
Yep. So the reason why I've put this in here is it's really important when you're entering the world of work, and even when you're in school or college, is that the things that are important to you and the way that you want to work is something that you can share in a comfortable space. Now, when I mentioned about culture before, it's really important to understand the culture and how you'll be supported when you start working, not just if you do an apprenticeship, but actually in the world of work. So, you know, who's going to manage you? What are their thoughts and feelings about supporting mental health, for example? What does the company do to support mental health? How do you progress? How do you move on in the world in that particular company? What's required of you? Do you have certain things that you have to attain? What's the career path? These are sort of things you don't think about when you go for an interview. You just think, well, I'm going for that particular job or that particular apprenticeship, and that's all I need to focus on. But when you've got the opportunity to ask those questions at the end of an interview, for example, is that you actually come in pre-prepared and think about those things. And that's why I think this quote is really important, is that we all have these inner monologues with ourselves, and we question what we're doing sometimes, and you know, with our friends and family. But actually being brave enough and strong enough to actually to speak those things aloud, to ask the questions that maybe it's difficult to ask. For example, in terms of how do you get supported at work? What's the career progression? What comes next? What do I need to do to impress you? Those are things that can go through your head, but you don't necessarily say them. But it's important that you do. This isn't just a case of saying anything you want aloud. This is being mindful of asking the right questions as well, especially when you enter the world of work, and making sure that you understand what you need to do to impress, what you need to do to progress. And also, even if you're not sure on what you want to do, is do the things that interest you. Bring all those soft skills, those hard skills that you've learned from high school and in college as well, to the workplace. Bring your whole self to work. It's really important to understand what that means as well. And when I first started my career, those things weren't present in companies' minds or managers' minds. It was very, very different model from a career point of view. So I think it's really important to understand that and do your research on the company as well. There's even reviews on TripAdvisor for certain companies. When you start Googling and looking on the internet, just to do a bit of research. And the same for careers as well. You know, as I talked before, there's so many different flavors of what you can do within the tech world. You know, you can manage projects. So are you organized? Do you use Microsoft products well? For example, things like Excel and projects, or do you use Microsoft Teams and use Planner? Do you know what agile means? Well, in IT terms, running a project through an agile methodology means that you're doing changes and releasing them quickly rather than waiting 12 months till the end of a project to release it to the user and the audience at hand. So understanding all these different nuances in the way that you approach projects, you might feel that's something you'd like to do. It's quite fulfilling to take a project from just somebody's thought in the head to actually it's a live running service, whether that's something like an application, like an app that you download, or whether it's something more complex like a website or a product that delivers HR and payroll services. So it's really important that you think about what it is you really enjoy, what your passion is as well, because the more you're passionate about a subject, the easier it is to apply that to the world of work, especially in technology. Next slide, please. So this talk was about software engineering, and I've tried to include a little bit of everything just to give a flavour of what technology looks like. My role is a complicated role because I have to manage staff and look after them, do appraisals, make sure they're stretched in their work, make sure they're not overwhelmed also in the work that they do. But I have to look after budget, make sure I pay my invoices on time, make sure I work with the suppliers of the products to ensure that we've got the right product, and we're looking to the future as well, and innovation. So things like, well, could we use IoT and use sensors in properties to understand what's going on with maybe problems with damp, or maybe the fact that if it's a shared accommodation where there's a lot of people living in one block, are people moving around? Are they interacting? Is the Wi-Fi working all the time? All those sort of things that you can use sensor information for. I'm assuming some of you have got Ring doorbells, so you can answer the door when you're not there and give a response to somebody that's come that you don't know. So all of those things, they're using that information, that data to provide a service. And it's looking at the big tech giants like Microsoft and Facebook to understand what they're doing and what we can do different as well, and how we can learn from our peers across different industries. So when I started out in the council as a software engineer, I was essentially coding and designing that product that we used and enhancing it, so making it better. And ensuring that when technology changed, so for example, we would go from paper forms, so where somebody's filling it out manually, sending it to the manager for them to sign it, then the manager's passing it on to payroll, and then it's input manually by an individual, is actually providing an application, a single app to enable that person to do it all digitally, fill out the details, the manager approves it via workflow, and then it goes into the payroll system without anybody having to do any manual intervention. So these are the sort of pieces of work I was involved in, coding, using a particular language for the software, but then how we ensure that that business application works in the way that it should do, not to reduce headcount, for example, but actually just to make the process more efficient, less open to risk, less open to issues. But being an engineer means you can work in computer games, you can work with middleware, and middleware is essentially what's used to communicate from one system to another, because in somewhere like a council or a housing association, there's a number of different applications that need to pass data between them, and the only way to do that is to use middleware to ensure that data moves around correctly and in a timely manner as well. So you can look at network. There's so many different career options. It's sometimes overwhelming, but it's actually understanding what your interests are and then applying that to a particular type of role. So on the next slide, there are some useful links, really, just to understand about how different companies support women, how they also support young people, how you can use different what different companies have done and use it in your own day-to-day career as well. So for example, I put some links on there to a DWP, which is part of the civil service. It's government funded. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the civil service, especially during the COVID times with the government response. But on this particular blog is a useful set of different information about women in software, also what the DWP does do to support their staff. It's a really interesting read, especially if you want to look at a tech career. I use DWP a lot to understand what they're doing, because sometimes they're ahead of the curve, and it's useful to understand what they're doing as well. I've put NHS digital on there because digital in NHS is huge. There's so many opportunities, so many different types of job roles that not everyone always thinks about the NHS of having those sort of tech careers. I've also put find an apprenticeship on there as well. A really important service if you want to look for apprenticeship after high school or college, and maybe looking at a level 3, a level 4. So level 3 is equivalent to A levels, a level 4, 5 and 6, where you're talking about degree level apprenticeships as well. Microsoft on there because there's lots of events that go across Microsoft in terms of not just the Microsoft Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive, but Azure as well. So if you've got an interest in anything on there, have a quick look at that. The roadmap for Microsoft, really interesting to see what they're doing next, when it's coming, and what that means for the end user. It gets you thinking about that user experience and enhancements in terms of their product suite. And then Agile project management is a really useful link on here about the beginner's guide and what skills that you need and what you'll do in an Agile project management role as well. So that's this topic dealt with today. If you've got any further questions, please post them. If there's anything I can do to help you, assist you, advise, please contact me. Hopefully Laura can share my details if you need it. And thank you for your participation today, and good luck for the future.
Excellent, thank you, Rachel. I'll just move us, I'll keep us on that slide with the useful links, and in a moment we will paste those website links into the question box for our audience today. We've had a few questions come in, Rachel. Would you mind telling us, someone's asked here, what do you most enjoy about your role, and what is the most challenging thing about it?
The thing that I most enjoy is making sure we give our users of any of the products that we own the right experience. It's really important to me that everything we do has the user at heart of the actual process. So for me, that's also the challenge as well, because the user doesn't often know what they want. So you're having to think like them from a non-technical point of view to understand what it is you're trying to deliver, how are you going to deliver it, and then what they're going to do with that at the end. So it could be a user of the website. They want to look at particular bits of information. They want to know what houses are available in their area. So it's a case of how we can make that as easy as possible for them to interact with our services. But we don't always know how the user wants to interact with us, or what they want to do, or even what their level of digital knowledge is. So we've got to simplify our processes and obviously question customers and get their feedback, and try to represent the whole demographic in terms of people who are very tech savvy to those individuals that maybe don't even own a mobile phone. So how do we assist them? So we have to do that whole view of a customer and their journey and the different types of customers that we've got. So it's very satisfying and rewarding when you get it right, but the challenge is how you get it right in the first place. So that's both sides of the coin, basically.
Brilliant, thank you, Rachel. And somebody else has said, oh, hold on one second. Would you have any advice for me? I am 15 and would like to go into cyber security.
So one of the things that I would look at initially is there's a particular government website, NCSC, where they have a lot of information about cyber security, cyber first competitions. There are some residential courses as well. Unfortunately, there's not that many in the Northwest. I think the one that's going to happen in August is in Lancaster. It's a 5-day residential. It's free, and there's a lot of places left for young women. So if anybody's interested, I would have a look at that as well and get that information. I would also approach your teachers as well, your computer science or your IT teachers, to understand what links they've got in with cyber. At Torus, we're just now developing a cyber specific role, and then the next step would be to look at an apprenticeship as well. So that would be another avenue I would look down as well. And again, cybersecurity is really diverse. There's lots of information in there. Hopefully, if your teacher or your head contacts NCSC, they do a lot of work with schools as well. So it might be that they can get somebody in to talk about the subject, and that would be really useful as well. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, great, Rachel. We have one last question here, and it says, what would be your dream app to design or work on?
So I don't know how many people use, for example, a banking app. For me, an equivalent would be having an app for our website. So our customers have to pay their rent, and some of them choose to do it online. So if we could shrink down our website and provide specific services so that people can download an app, that's what I really want to work on next. That's what really excites me, is actually changing our technology, going from a traditional website, which suits some people, but actually having an app that people can download and then interact with us in that way as well. You know, we can have chatbots on there. We can assist them with any queries they've got. We can help them to find housing if they're looking for a shared ownership, i.e., so they can buy a new house and the government owns some of the share in that as well. It's all about opportunities and making sure we're targeting the right audience at the right time and giving people choice as well. So that's would be my next port of call in terms of what I'd like to develop personally myself.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. And a huge thank you to our audience today for joining us. I really hope you enjoyed it. This will be available as a recording soon on our YouTube channel, and I'll pop the link to that in the chat box now. And for all of the classes that registered to attend today, we will send you Rachel's presentation so that you have all of those useful links within it, and you're able to see the other Meet Your Future talks on our YouTube channel as well. Rachel, do you have any final thoughts for today before we end the presentation?
My main point to all of this is just using what you know, using what you've learned, and actually thinking about a tech career. It's only growing as an area for careers. There's so much choice at the moment, and so many opportunities, and it's also about going into that with an open mind and adapting and changing as that need changes as well. And also, you know, trying to get more young people interested in sort of STEM subjects at high school and college, but also then applying even the softer skills like art into technology careers as well, and thinking outside the box, which we always say here at Torus is about stretching yourself, stretching your mind, and being open to the opportunity as well.
Excellent.
Thank you, Laura.
Rachel, thank you so much for being our special guest speaker today. You've given us a really fantastic insight. Thank you again to the audience for joining us. Up on the screen is our gmax.co.uk website, where you can find out more information about careers within digital and tech, especially in Greater Manchester, as it is such a huge growth sector for this area that we live in. We also have hashtag MYF for our series of talks, and as I said at the beginning, this week is our final week of talks before summer break, and you can follow us on social media under @YourGmax to see all of the latest activities that we're up to and extra things you can get involved in. Thanks so much again, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.